Hi guys, Michael Abayemi here. Today, I'd like to talk about numbers, or more specifically, box office numbers, as it seems quite a number of movies have fallen short of expectations at the box office of late, or they've turned out to be outright flops and financial failures. I'll also be tackling why I think this has been happening in the first place, and what I think studios can do to mitigate this with future releases. So the summer movie season is typically when studios release their biggest tentpoles, the movies that they expect to attract the most amounts of crowds, and usually these are the movies that studios actually spend the most money producing. Like they tend to have like big budgets as well as big marketing spends to really get the word out. And this year, we've had quite a bit of highs and lows when you look at the summer box office. The season started with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 at the start of May, and even though that movie did quite well relatively speaking, almost every movie since then has either turned out to be a box office disappointment or an outright flop. Case in point, we have The Little Mermaid. So The Little Mermaid is a movie that was surrounded by lots of controversy because Disney had opted to cast a black actress as Ariel. And because of this, there was pushback even before the movie came out, a lot of downvotes on the YouTube trailers and all that. So of course, when the movie was about to release, a lot of people like myself had already decided to skip out on it entirely. But I was still kind of curious to see how the movie was going to do financially, like how it was going to do at the end of the day. And I wasn't surprised when it turned out that other people had also opted to skip out on the movie. As of the time of this recording, the movie has made over $500 million in the global box office, which when you hear about that number on paper, it sounds like quite a bit of money. But once you start factoring the actual budget of the film, which was budgeted at $250 million, and you now also add in the marketing expenses as well, print and advertising and all that, which has an estimated $140 million budget, you quickly start to realize that $528 million doesn't even allow the movie to break even. Of course, there are those, if you go online, there are those that will lead you to believe that the movie only needs to make about 550 to 560 to break even. But I would really say that would be really lowballing the figures when you consider that studios only get to keep about half of what they make at the box office, because at the end of the day, cinemas who show the movies actually need to make money as well. They're not running a charity. So studios at the end of the day only end up keeping about half of what they make. So that means really, as it stands for The Little Mermaid, it is currently in the red. And most of that can be directly attributed to the pushback the movie has been receiving. So of course, a lot of the news outlets, like all the top trades, were quick to point out the fact that the movie was bombing in countries like China and Korea, and they attributed all of that to racism. But the fact of the matter is that the issue is actually a lot more nuanced than just saying that anybody that doesn't like the film is a racist. For example, now I'd already opted not to see it based on principle. Does that make me a racist? To be quite odd if it does. And that racist narrative tends to fall apart when you look at all the other movies we got after The Little Mermaid. Because just the following week, we had Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which has been nothing but a resounding success. This is a movie that has grossed over $600 million already, a huge portion of which came from countries like China and Korea. Then even Transformers Rise of the Beast was another movie that came out and did relatively well in those regions compared to The Little Mermaid. So once again, how can you claim racism in those countries when these countries clearly embraced these other movies? Obviously, that racism card doesn't hold any water. Then aside from Little Mermaid, we've also had some resounding flops like Elemental and Flash, both of which debuted on the same weekend. And in the case of Elemental, it actually debuted to the second lowest numbers in the history of Pixar as a studio, which was just mind-boggling when you consider the fact that this was a studio that once upon a time, a Pixar movie was seen as an event. But because of all the woke messaging in all the recent string of movies from Disney, a lot of parents opted to stay away from the film. In the case of The Flash, the movie was just pretty much dead on arrival. Even though I actually enjoyed the film because I went out, saw it, and I felt it was an okay movie, there were just too many extenuating circumstances surrounding the film that dissuaded a lot of people from giving it a chance. Like when you consider the fact that you had all the Ezra Miller drama as well, you had the fact that past DCEU movies haven't really been doing that well. Then you also have James Gunn coming out to announce that the whole thing was going to be rebooted, making all these movies that are still in the can kind of pointless to a lot of people. A lot of people have already opted to wait and check it out when it comes out at home. So all these factors just works together against The Flash, and that was one of the reasons why the movie is really suffering as much as it's currently doing at the box office. Then more recently, we just had Indiana Jones at the Dial of Destiny, which is one I've not even checked out. But from the numbers that came out after the 4th of July weekend, the movie also came in way beneath expectations and box office estimates. So the question then is, why have all these movies which were all expected to do quite well at the box office, becoming out to be outright flops or box office disappointments at best case scenario. Like, it's just clear that there's a big disconnect between the people at the studios, the marketing executives and all that, and the actual audience. And because of that disconnect, a lot of people haven't been turning out for these movies. So I actually think the first thing that we need to consider is the fact that most of these movies have had very huge budgets. Like, the budgets of these movies have been going way out of control. Because, for example, now a movie like Megan, which came out earlier in the year, only ended up grossing 180 million at the box office, which is well beneath what a movie like Little Mermaid has been making. But when you now factor in the fact that the movie only had a budget of $12 million, you can see how much of a resounding success the movie actually is at the end of the day. So the fact that all these movies tend to have budgets well over 200 million, these are some of the things that work to prevent these movies from turning a profit during their theatrical run. Then we also have the fact that most of these movies tend to have a lot of woke messaging within them. And the audiences have gotten to a point where everyone is just tired of hearing the same messages being beaten over our heads over and over again. Because the primary purpose of which we go and watch most of all these movies is for entertainment. We just go and watch these movies because we want to be entertained at the end of the day. That's why you have a movie like Top Gun Maverick that would come out and you find out it grosses over $1 billion because it's a movie that resonates with everyone. Regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, whether you're on the left, whether you're on the right, regardless of your beliefs, none of that matters within the context of the film because the film is simply there to entertain. It is simply there to thrill you. Like, people are tired of having all these political issues and identity politics being infused into movies. It's one thing if it's infused and the movie still turn out to be great. For example, like a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once. But most of these movies are mediocre, and the mediocrity comes from the fact that they've chosen to focus on all these issues and all these side tangents instead of actually focusing on writing a competent script. So people are just tired of having all these mediocre movies with all this political messaging within them. The good news is that at least we can still point to movies like the Super Mario Bros. Movie as shining examples of what a movie studio needs to do in order to be successful in today's current climate. Because this is a movie that has made over $1.3 billion in the global box office. And most of that is just down to the fact that at its core, it is a movie that served as a celebration of the Super Mario franchise. Like, the movie wasn't concerning itself with any woke messaging, any identity politics. It was just there to entertain Mario fans. And people, when they find movies like this, you find out that these are the movies that people are most willing and eager to recommend. Same with Top Gun Maverick, like I said earlier on. So people just want movies that don't pander to a particular audience. People want their movies to be movies because our day-to-day lives are already filled with more than enough political issues and all these controversies and all that. And one of the reasons why we watch movies is as a form of escape. So people just want their movies to give them that escape, not to remind them of how crappy or crummy the world is. Regarding if 2023 can be considered the year of flops, I would say that we're only halfway into the year because in July we have a number of tentpoles that look like they could actually turn out to be very big or great movies. The next one on the slate is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which, coming off the success of Top Gun Maverick, everybody has their eye on this as the next Tom Cruise tentpole movie that everybody needs to check out. Then we also have movies like Oppenheimer and Barbie releasing on the same day. So yeah, the summer is still pretty much ongoing, and I'm actually quite curious to see how many of these movies will turn out to be successful, and if we're going to get any other movie that will be on the same level of success as the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Personally, I don't think we can get another movie that is going to outgross that within this current climate within this year. But who knows? My eyes are on Mission Impossible as the closest bet we have as the next one. Anyway, these are just my thoughts about the current state of movies at the box office and all the box office failures. What do you think is the reason most of these movies have been failing at the box office? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed watching this discussion, and to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on if you'd like to see more discussions like this in the future. And until the next one, this is Michael, signing off.